wine tasting lessons learned. Speech summary: Cate will inform the audience about the joys and wonders of wine tasting in Willamette Valley, Oregon, by sharing lessons learned on a wine tasting weekend. This is from the Common Communicator Manual, speech number 3, get to the point. Her objectives: select the speech topic and determine its general and specific purposes, organize the speech and ensure the beginning, body, and conclusion reinforce the purposes, project sincerity and conviction, and strive not to use notes. Time, 5 to 7 minutes. Give a warm welcome to Cate.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, I know how to drink wine. Sip, swallow, repeat. Wine tasting, however, is an altogether different experience. Swallowing is discouraged. Tasters spit their wine into a waste bucket. Now, wine tasting conjures up images of rolling hills, wine with rows of grapevines, and well-kept estates, gardens, and it also conjures up that image of the superior or even snobbish wine server who talks about vintage and season and makes really grand statements about wine, like wonderfully rich and complex notes of plums, truffles, and tobacco. Now, I want to share today with you a few tips for your own wine tasting enjoyment. Cate's wine tasting tip number 1. Go wine tasting in Oregon, specifically Willamette Valley. Why Oregon? First of all, it's just as picturesque and charming as Napa Valley or Sonoma, but it has half the people, and it has fantastic wine. Which brings me to Cate's wine tasting tip number 2. Try the Pinot Noir. Now, Pinot Noir is produced from red grapes, but it's typically lighter in color than other red wines, and it's also not usually blended. Now, many wine tasting enthusiasts view Pinot Noir as one of the most highly prized wines in the world, and in Oregon, Pinot Noir is king. It turns out that Oregon happens to have an excellent climate for growing the Pinot Noir grape, and most of the wineries there have their own variety of Pinot Noir. However, have no fear if you're a white wine drinker, because Oregon also has a number of Pinot Grigio and Chardonnay varieties, which are also quite popular. Now, Cate's wine tasting tip number 3, go barrel tasting. Most folks just wander up to the wine tasting bar in the tasting room, but go further, explore into the inner workings of the winery. Now, barrel tasting is where your guide will take what looks like a large medicine dropper and insert it into a little hole into the wine barrel and extract out a sip of wine into your glass for a taste. And the wine in the barrel is not quite ready to be bottled, but it is, however, excellent for tasting. Barrel tasting can be a way to taste wine which will likely be very expensive at some point in the future. Now, to go barrel tasting, you typically need to make an appointment or sign up for a tour. Or go with Cate's wine tasting tip number 4, bring along your sommelier friend in a number of wineries in Willamette Valley. That way, you may even get a private tour of the vineyard, or get to meet the winemaker, who surprisingly doesn't look like they belong in the tasting room, but look like your average farmer out anywhere in rural Utah. There's a corollary to Cate's wine tasting tip number 4, and that is ignore your sommelier's friend's recommendation to try the rosé. No rosé is the latest trend, but here's what you need to know about rosé. It's typically very expensive. It's less than $15 a bottle, and the newer the better. Rosé does not age or improve with time, and it does not compare to Pinot Noir. So when that wine server brings out the rosé selection, my suggestion is that's a great time to hit the restroom. Now, finally, the best part of wine tasting is bringing home a few bottles for your own enjoyment, perhaps even a case, to share with your friends and family. One sip of that delicious Pinot Noir, and you will be transported back to the rolling hills and vineyards of Oregon.
Please take a moment, write a love